Okay, DW Gaming here with the developer update for March 2024. Just going to go through this quickly, not a whole lot to talk about here. This is the mid-chapter patch. I assume it'll be going live in a couple weeks or so. I first had the public test build on Steam. Yeah, okay, whatever. So they've made changes to the twins. I don't play twins. I think they're aesthetically, they're very disgusting. Not a pleasant killer to play. And mechanically, they're not very fun to play either. So I don't play them much at all. I think like 3 people play them of the whole community. If you want an in-depth analysis of how they play, I think one of the most prominent twins mains is Lynxy, so be sure to look for her video about these changes. I'll try to go over these as best I can. As I said, I don't play them, so I'm not familiar with all the mechanics they'll be talking about. But here goes. So they reduced the time it takes to switch back to Charlotte, which is good. I mean, that was kind of a long time. Reduce the time it takes to unbind Victor. Okay. Reduce the time it takes to charge Victor's pounce. Added the ability to recall Victor at any point while he is unbound. So they can't kidnap Victor anymore. Added the ability to change between Victor and Charlotte near a hooked survivor. Be warned, the anti-face camp meter will still fill if you're too close, and of course it will. Dev note, we've made switching between Charlotte and Victor more responsive and given the killer the ability to recall Victor at any time so they feel better to play. Okay. They've updated some add-ons. Victor's pounce no longer latches onto healthy survivors. So what this means is when you hit someone with Victor, the first time you hit a survivor with Victor, he will pounce on them, but he'll only injure them. So I'm assuming that it'll be some kind of a cooldown between the time they'll get a sprint burst as usual, and then you'll be able to use Victor again. It says Victor can no longer be kicked after successful pounces which do not latch onto a survivor. So they can't kick him. So what will happen is he'll pounce, he'll hit a survivor as if you were a normal M1 killer. There would be a cooldown, I assume. The survivor would get a speed boost. And then you can go after them with Victor again. So it's basically letting you control Victor rather than having the survivor Victor lash onto the survivor, and the survivor could kidnap Victor for a lengthy amount of time, denying you Victor's ability. So, okay, that's interesting. New, Victor's pounce now latches onto survivors when they are put into the dying state. Other survivors can crush Victor during this to help the dying survivor. Victor will automatically return to Charlotte after 20 seconds. While Victor is attached to a survivor or holding a survivor in a locker, Charlotte gains a 10% haste effect. That's a pretty good haste bonus. This effect will be lost prematurely if Charlotte hits a survivor. Removed. Survivors near Victor while he is latched onto another survivor are no longer revealed by killer instinct. Okay. So this is, I don't know if it's a nerf or not. As I said, I don't play this killer. I might give the twins a try when these changes go live, just to see. Dev note, previously the twins' power heavily encouraged slugging, since Victor could chain together pounces on multiple injured survivors, but only pounces a single healthy one. Furthermore, survivors could often save each other before Charlotte could make it to them. Yeah. We have flipped this around. Victor will now be much more effective at injuring multiple survivors and instead assists Charlotte, who now moves faster while Victor's latched on, in picking up the survivor. This makes it possible for Victor to both injure and down a survivor without being forced to switch back to Charlotte in between. Okay. So they're showing what happens when you down a survivor with Victor. I wish they would show what happens when you injure a survivor with Victor instead of this. This is kind of useless. Because I'm assuming there's going to be a cooldown where Victor is locked in animation after he injures a survivor. It'd be interesting to see how long that is. New, the visual terror radius accessibility setting will now include Victor's grunts. Okay. Victor will now glow red whenever he is vulnerable to being crushed. Dev note, we have updated the visual terror radius to include Victor's grunts to improve accessibility and added a red glow to Victor whenever he is vulnerable to being crushed to improve visual feedback. All right. Yeah, not sure what to make of these changes. I will have to try this killer when they go live. I don't really play them now, though, but I'll see how they work when this is on the live server. The Blight minor update, improved collision detection to reduce cases where the Blight slides off objects. I'm assuming they improved it where, like, if you're on Haddonfield and there are snowbanks all over the map and you can't actually collide on them, you just slide around them. They've made those objects, actually improved it to where you can collide on them. Because Ormond is one of the worst maps for Blight because he pretty much slides off everything on that map. So I'm assuming this is what they're talking about. Dev note, it could be frustrating to slide off an object you were trying to bump into and end your rush prematurely. Yeah, that was frustrating. We have improved the collision detection to make the Blight's rush more consistent. This also fixes an issue which allowed the Blight to incorrectly slide along obstacles and lunge around tighter corners than intended. So they nerfed him, I guess? No more hug tech? That's what they're saying. I don't know. I don't play a whole lot of Blight either. I can see this change being good on maps like Ormond, where Blight would slide around pretty much everything. But in terms of like where you could use the hug tech around like Killer Shack, this is a nerf. Yeah, I'll have to see. Haddonfield, they've made some changes to the map itself. They reduced the overall size, reduced the length of hedges and fences. They've adjusted various houses to reduce the strength of strong loops. So I'm hoping that means they got rid of like double windows in a lot of places that created infinites pretty much. They actually reduced the number of houses in the map. Okay, that's good too. So yeah, we'll have to see how that is. They've also added more objects in the center of the map, and of course, I'm sure added more pallets. Added pallets and lockers along the edge of the map. Updated street tiles feature more pallet loops, of course. They are pallet happy in this game. Let's see what they say. The outdoor areas were fairly empty before, encouraging survivors to make a run for the nearest house when they were chased. Since we've reduced the strength of houses, we've added some additional loops to the street and edges to make the map spread out chases and reduce dead zones. Yeah, we'll see about that. We'll have to see when this goes live. They have a very bad map design team. They don't really understand how to balance maps in this game. So I'm a little nervous about what they've done with adding more pallets, because they tend to just add more pallets and not really reduce the strength of existing tiles. We'll see what they've done with these houses. The houses themselves were very busted. A lot of M1 killers would struggle with like double windows, so it looks like they've gotten rid of that. Decisive Strike, yeah, they're changing Decisive Strike because it's such a horrible perk. They increased the stun duration to 5 seconds, was 3 seconds. So they put it back to 5. I think the reason why they reduced it to 3 was because they didn't want survivors using it in an offensive way, and now they have completely forgotten about survivors using it in that way. This is a bad change. It should remain at 3 seconds. Because now it's just going to encourage more survivors to run off the record, Decisive Strike, Dead Hard, all that. And I've seen the counter argument, which isn't really an argument at all, saying, well, they can do that now. That doesn't matter if they can do that now. It's still a problem. It's a problem that they can do it now. It'll be even more of a problem that they can do it when this update goes live. So what will you do to address the problem? Saying they can do that now does not address the issue. The issue is survivors use these defensive perks in an offensive manner. There is nothing. They're encouraged to do that even more so now that they've buffed it back to 5 seconds. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. Honestly, I think Decisive Strike should deactivate if the killer hooks a different survivor. I, for the most part, will ignore a survivor who's been unhooked. But I've still had to deal with Decisive Strike after going for a completely different survivor because that other survivor who was unhooked earlier still has this perk available because it lasts like 60 seconds, which is absurd. I think as soon as you hook, if you're the killer, as soon as you hook a different survivor, Decisive Strike should deactivate. That makes it a true anti-tunneling perk because the killer is not going for you immediately after you're unhooked. The killer is going for a different survivor. If they included that with increasing the stun duration, I would be fine with this. Unfortunately, this is only a buff. This isn't balanced in any way now. It wasn't even balanced before. But at least 3 seconds is better than 5. This is too much. Just make it so it deactivates when the killer hooks a survivor other than the survivor using the perk. That would make it a true anti-tunnel perk. Either that or make it so the survivor using this perk does not have collision, so they can't body block if the killer's going after a different survivor. One of those two. Added a new stabbing animation when Decisive Strikes use, whatever. They waste their time with these new animations when they could be making the game more playable. But whatever. Had to have a new animation. Given the amount of bugs in this game, you'd think you'd be focused on those, but nope. We have to have a new animation. Dev note, the survivor is locked in place for part of the stun while they are being dropped by the killer, so it didn't leave them with much time to run away once they hit the ground. What? We've increased the duration of the stun to give the survivor a fair chance to reach some distance. While we were at it, we add new animations plays when the survivor successfully gives some visual flair to the perk. Who cares? You have a million bugs in this game you could be trying to fix, and you think it's a good idea to add a stupid new animation. Where are your priorities? Yeah, this is a bad change. This is it's just a very problematic perk to begin with. And now survivors will be using it all the time to body block and all that nonsense. In the counter argument is, just don't tunnel. Okay, first of all, there's a couple of problems with that. The question of why killers tunnel can be answered with a question. That question is, why do the devs make kills the objective of the killer? If the objective of the killer was hooks, then yeah, tunneling would be less prevalent. But since kills are the objective, one of the most efficient ways for killers to accomplish that objective is to get a survivor out early. That way it reduces the team's overall efficiency and makes it easier for the killer to kill off the remaining survivors. So number one, this perk is going against what the developers establish as a win condition for killers. Secondly, there are many times when, number one, the killer doesn't mean to tunnel. They aren't keeping track of who they've hooked. And this is where my idea would come in, where if you do hook a different survivor, this perk should deactivate so it doesn't punish a killer for losing track of who they've hooked. And number two, tunneling is often necessary if the match goes against the killer. So, I mean, that whole don't tunnel argument is erroneous. It's an idiotic argument because, number one, the devs have made kills the win condition. And number two, killers often will either encounter survivors who use this in an offensive manner or don't keep track of who they hooked and are punished for it. So that argument is put to rest. The stupid don't tunnel argument. And then the other argument where, well, they do that anyway with these defensive perks, doesn't mean it's not a problem. It's still a problem. So what would you do to fix that? I know what I would do. As I said, I would make it deactivate when the killer hooks a different survivor. That's what I would do. Or remove collision when it's active. Either or. Maybe even removing collision while active would be even better because then the killer would have a better opportunity to hook a different survivor. But yeah, I mean, this the way it is bad. This did not need to be reverted to 5 seconds. It just boggles my mind that they do something like this when they've established that the win condition for killers is kills. It's it's like the developers talking out of two sides of their mouth. We want the killer's win to be based on kills. Here, we'll give survivors every possible opportunity to avoid being killed. It doesn't make any sense. Adrenaline. So it looks like they nerfed it, which is good. Adrenaline was always a problem. So adrenaline no longer activates if you're hooked when the gates are powered. Good. That was stupid. Reduce the speed boost duration to 3 seconds. Was 5 seconds. Okay. Adrenaline no longer causes you to wake up when facing the nightmare. Well, that's a slight buff for Freddy, but still, it's Freddy. And come on. No, Adrenaline had a lot of expectations, which made it difficult to play around. Yes. If a survivor was hooked while the exit gates were powered, they would be healthy and receive a substantial speed boost upon being unhooked, making it very difficult for the killer to catch them before they could escape. I'm glad you realized that. Now, you should realize that borrowed time at base should be deactivated when the exit gates are powered. Otherwise, survivors get free escapes anyway. We have made it so adrenaline no longer pauses when you're on the hook. Okay. We've also removed the wake-up effect when facing the nightmare to clean up the perk as we moved away from perks that affect specific killer powers over the years. So this is a good change. I would take it even further, though. I would make adrenaline either give you a speed boost or heal you a single health state. I wouldn't make it do both. that still is kind of a little bit broken. This is better than what it was, but still, if you're chasing a injured survivor in that last gen goes, that's a very bad feeling when you see them heal to full health and get a speed boost. I would make it one or the other, not both. But still, this is a step in the right direction in terms of changing this perk. They probably won't change it anymore, but that's what I would do. I would make it either or. I wouldn't make it both. Either they get a speed boost or they heal a health state. So yeah, they admit that the that the killer, it's difficult for the killer to catch them before they could escape. Well, now that you have admitted that, take base borrowed time away from survivors at endgame, so they don't get a free escape either. Because as soon as they're unhooked, if they're near an exit gate, it's a free escape. So yeah, they just need to do that as well. Ultimate weapon. It now reveals survivors' aura instead of causing them to scream. Okay, that screaming was rather annoying. Reduced activation time to 15 seconds was 30. Increased cooldown to 60 seconds was 30. So they nerfed it a little bit. I really don't have a problem with this. Ultimate weapons kind of it did a little too much, I think. Yeah, Ultimate Weapon was a jack of all trades, providing both information and a consistent way to interrupt survivor actions, allowing it to synergize too well with other perks. Rather than screaming, survivors will instead have their aura revealed. This means it will no longer interrupt survivor actions, though survivors won't know they're being revealed to the killer. Well, they'll know if they all of a sudden can't see auras because of the blindness effect. So unless you're removing the blindness effect, they will still know. Do these guys, when they write these things, do they understand how these perks work? I mean, it still tells survivors that, hey, they just activated Ultimate Weapon because now I can't see auras. So unless they remove it. I mean, honestly, to change Ultimate Weapon, I think it's good to remove to have it reveal auras instead for them to scream. That's a good change because that screaming was really annoying. To change it further, I would make it so it no longer inflicts blindness. I don't know why blindness is even part of the perk. It really makes no sense. Since Ultimate Weapon is easy to activate, it was possible to keep its effect active throughout the entire match. Yes, we have increased the cooldown and decreased its activation window to ensure some downtime between uses. Yeah, these are good changes. I think it was a bit of an overpowered perk. I would just get rid of the blindness. There's no reason for it to inflict blindness on survivors. Emblems. Remove the ability to lose a pip. Okay, that's fine. I'll make it easier to achieve the maximum rank when the 13th of the month comes around, so you can get more blood points. With emblems being used solely for monthly rewards these days, it felt needlessly punishing to lose a pip after a rough match. Yes, this quality of life change will make the emblem system less stressful. Good. This also applies to modifiers. You can enjoy these limited time modes without worrying about your grade. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's a good change. Store. They've revamped the store. Visual overhaul. Specials tab. Collections tab. Killer Mori animations can now be viewed in the store. That's interesting. Does that mean we'll be getting Moris that we can purchase, perhaps, or maybe as rewards for prestiging a killer to a certain level? And they added a weekly gift that can be claimed for free. That's interesting. Store hasn't changed much. It was introduced in 2018. Yeah, they're just making it easier to navigate. For example, it's not possible to purchase an entire DLC pack through the in-game store rather than purchasing each character separately. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Nothing to say on that. Archives, new tomes, and their respective risks will now open at the same time as the update. A new Rift bundle option, which grants the premium Rift rewards and the 20-tier head start at discounted price. Okay. All right, so that looks like it's it. Biggest issue I have is this. This needs to be, if you're going to buff it to 5 seconds, it needs to have a downside. And as I said, I would make it deactivate if a killer hooks a different survivor, as well as deactivate if you perform a conspicuous action. Or I would make it so while it's active, the survivor does not have collision and can't body block a killer. That's what I would do. Just a straight buff to it is unwarranted. It needs to have a downside as well. Otherwise, it's going to be used to bully killers. There's no doubt about it. It already is, but even more so now. And this change does nothing to address that. So I would make this... if you're going to have it to 5 seconds, you need to give it a nerf as well. So Decisive Strike is going to be a major problem. All the other changes I don't really care that much about. Twins, I don't play twins. 3 people play them at most. So Blight, I don't play Blight all that much. This might get rid of the hug tech. Okay, Blight's still going to be strong. And Haddonfield, we'll have to see how that looks. I don't have a lot of faith in the map design team for this game. So that's it. Just letting my viewers know the changes that will be coming with the March 2024 developer update. Most likely in a few weeks, so I'd say around mid-April this will go live, and we'll see what happens from there. I will see everyone in the next video.